Well, it's 332 days until Election Day and just 51 until the first contest, the Iowa caucuses. Now, Donald Trump still in the lead, and that's at least according to pretty much every poll we can see here nationally, but even in Iowa. Now, the Donald, he's holding on to, on the national level, a 20-point lead. And in New Hampshire, he's jumped out to a 15-point lead. Chris Christie, he's actually climbed into second, believe it or not. Christie has practically made that state his second home. Now, in the South's first primary, South Carolina, where you wouldn't think a northerner like Trump would do well, Trump, he's also holding a commanding lead there as well. So what does it all tell us about the GOP? And we can do this on topics, on issues, but he says what he says about Muslims. 2-1 nationally, people oppose it. Republicans, it's a toss-up. 39-38, they oppose or support the thing. What have we learned to this point, Scott, about what the Republican base wants, and also about this candidate's staying power?
Well, there's a lot to chew on here. First of all, you're talking about primary voters in most of these polls. Secondly, most of the polls, my understanding, were taken before he made the comments about Muslims. So that hasn't really appeared.
Even some of the ones, you're right, but even some of the ones that have been taken after, including South Carolina, they reflect a bump. He is not seen in a single poll, and that's not the only one that factored in some of the comments. Some were taken throughout both of them, and he's only seen an uptick.
Yeah, but I think that relates primarily to the whole question of safety, of terrorism. I mean, he's strong on that, you know. Forgetting the Muslim comment, okay, he's been tough on it. Talking in his large, you know, expansive ways.
With no specifics and everything else.
You know, the Barker does this. He says, I got the fattest guy here. Come on in. All you do is pay your dues. You get in there and it's Uncle Jim, you know, who just came over. I mean, and he doesn't have to worry about it. He's already got the money. I mean, this guy, that's what he does. And he's used the fear of society to generate, especially in that base that you talk about, the Republican base, which is solid. I mean, they don't want to hear about Muslims. They don't want to hear. They're afraid. They're afraid, okay? And I don't think it's going to last, and he cannot get elected any longer after that Muslim comment.
We're going to talk next segment about what the party can do about it and how worried they really are. But are you a little surprised? First of all, on a priority standpoint, I know we've seen Paris and I know we've seen San Bernardino, so it's obviously topical in people's minds. But he's obviously tapping into something, right? And maybe it's not what Republicans and certainly the Jeb Bushes of the party want to hear right now, but there's an ugly, scared part here that he's more than happy to feed. He's either stumbled on it or he's figured out what they want, but he's given the people what they want, at least in the Republican base here.
Right. So so it's very simple. Trump is the opposite of Obama, President Obama. President Obama, among Republicans, the base, and what I call the base of more the conservative Tea Party folks, President Obama is seen as being weak internationally, right? When it came to Syria, if you passed this red line, you know, we'll take action. That didn't happen. When it came to just recently talking about how we're going to fight homegrown terrorism, people weren't satisfied. So Trump is seen by the Republican base as more powerful and more tougher than President Obama, as President Bush was seen opposite of President Obama. So that's why people like Trump, because he doesn't represent what President Obama, which is being weak on international affairs.
But that's fine, guys, if he was the only person in the field. Every Republican is talking tough right now, but the only one that seems to be resonating is the guy with the Make America Great Again hat. Now, when we come back...
He's talking tougher than everybody else. The perception is that he's tougher.
Shutting off borders and all the rest. All right.
Exactly.
At home,
that's the perception.
You tell me what you think here. And you can tell us, obviously, as you can every night on Facebook and Twitter. Here's our question for you. Is it getting more or less likely in your eyes that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee for president? If you had to bet now, as they do futures betting or whatever, would you bet on his stock more than the field's to represent the GOP? All right, we come back. We're going to stay on the subject of Donald Trump here, but what I want to ask, and I got two Republicans here who can answer it, is the establishment clearly does not want to go along to get along with this guy. Just what can they do to derail his candidacy, and how far are they willing to go?